Good evening, everyone. My name is Maureen Wilson, and it's May the 11th. Welcome to our roundtable discussion on the City of Hamilton's climate action strategy. Thank you for joining us. I know it is a beautiful spring evening, and the fact that you've made time out of this beautiful evening to spend it with us today, I think speaks to your commitment already and to the future, to the present, and to Hamilton. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to kick off this discussion by going through the agenda, introducing our guests, and Stephanie will set out how we can participate. But before I get going, I'd like to read a land acknowledgement. The City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the City of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. So thank you again. My name is Maureen Wilson. I'm joined this evening by two amazing guests, Director Lynda Lukasik of the City of Hamilton's Office of Climate Change Initiatives, and with her is Trevor Imhoff, who is the Senior Project Manager in that office. And I'm delighted that they're able to spend tonight with us. They are both very, very busy. They are leaning in significantly into their community outreach, which means not only busy days, but busy nights for them. But I think it's a measure of their commitment and their guiding principles. So thank you both for being with us. We're going to have a little bit of a welcome, of course, and go right into the presentation, and there'll be a moderated Q&A. So just so that we can familiarize ourselves around the table, it's like when you have someone in for tea. Trevor, this is my second term of council. It's been my great honor and privilege to serve, but I first met you in my first term, and you were a shining light, and still are, and there's my dog, of course, barking at this moment, in the public health department. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you got here.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wilson, and thank you everyone for joining and having me. Before joining the Office of Climate Change Initiatives, which is a brand new office, and so excited to be working with Dr. Lukasik, I spent just over 6 years working in public health in the field of environmental health. Specifically, my team ran and coordinated Clean Air Hamilton, helped to fund innovative projects around air quality monitoring, working with non-government organizations such as Environment Hamilton, Green Venture, McMaster University. And prior to that, I worked for a small municipality in Niagara region, looking at the groundwater resources and contamination. And before that, spent a couple of years in environmental engineering, doing a large scale and small scale environmental remediation. And so that really is my technical background, is in applied environmental science, and looking at with a diploma in environmental remediation and restoration.
Thanks, Trevor. So were you always sensitive or paying attention to the environment? Was there something that you that caused your childhood? Was there something in your childhood to create this interest, or did it develop at school? Or
yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilson, for that question. It definitely grew right from early childhood. I grew up in central and a little bit north Ontario there, next to some beautiful lakes that I could swim in, deep forests that I ran in with my brother, exploring the forest and the different animals and species there. And so that's really where my love of nature came from, and wanting to restore it from the degradation and also to protect it as well.
Yeah, well, how can you not be moved by such beauty? Thank you, Trevor. Dr. Lukasik, who really does not need an introduction in Hamilton, but Lynda, you're the newbie on the block here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Yeah. My journey has been a long one. My hair's white now. It wasn't when I started. But like Trevor, if I think right back to when I was a kid, there were these sort of defining moments. My folks taking me and my siblings out to hike in the Dundas Valley. I grew up in a neighborhood on the edge of Red Hill Valley. But I think I was always kind of tuned into the tension between the natural environment and the impacts that we were having on it. I'm from a steel family, so it's kind of hard not to be very tuned into those impacts. So that sort of got me thinking and moving along on my journey. I have an undergraduate degree in biochemistry from McMaster. And by the end of that degree, I was focused on environmental biochemistry. So working on research efforts with Dr. Brian McCary, and many will know that name, and Dr. Douglas Bryant. And then I started to shift away into the more interdisciplinary side of things. So environmental studies for a master's and citizen science became my focus there, and ultimately a PhD in planning. But I really looked at radical forms of planning, how community gets involved and shapes the way a city, a neighborhood evolves and grows over time. So, and along the way, I helped to get an organization started. So Environment Hamilton, I feel like it was my baby, along with other activists in the community. And I spent over 20 years of my working life doing advocacy, public education outreach for Environment Hamilton. It's my passion. I care so much about this community. I think probably like everyone on this call, just know that it's a wonderful place, and there's so much potential to make this place so much better for everyone. So I just want to say very quickly, I'm really excited to be sitting where I'm sitting right now. It feels strange in the sense that, I was pushing from the outside to help to make a climate action strategy the best it could be. And I know and respect and appreciate that Trevor has been on the inside for all of those years trying to do the same. And now Trevor and I are trying not to feel like the weight of the world is on our shoulders, but now the two of us have to sort of orchestrate, and soon there'll be more of us, but ensuring that everybody comes together and makes implementation swift and effective. And we see a better future for our city. So excited to be here tonight. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, we're delighted that you're both in where you are. But to your point, it is a heavy responsibility, but it is not one that you can bear by yourself, because you didn't get us to this point, and it's going to take a whole bunch of us to move us in a direction that we need to go, if only for our grandchildren. But we have to begin. We should have begun, obviously, 40 years ago. But let that responsibility be ours today. So I'm going to stop talking. That's the first bit of good news. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Lukasik and Trevor, and they're going to walk us through a brief presentation. Thank you.
So I just want to say, again, thanks to everyone for the opportunity to be here tonight and share more about the mandate of the recently formed Office of Climate Change Initiatives and our 2023 priority focus areas. So I'm going to kick things off, then hand over to Trevor. But before I proceed, and I'm going to say it again, want to emphasize a couple of things. First, that the priorities that we share with you tonight are not the only priorities unfolding within the city. So our office priorities are, in addition to the various climate change related initiatives that are already contained within 2023 work plans for departments and divisions right across the corporation. So I think that's really important to bear in mind. We're now just trying to ramp it up that much more. And of course, this is a good opportunity, and I'm going to take this too to say the city of Hamilton has a really important role to play. We're sort of like the keepers of the strategy, and we need to be a leader. We need to take aggressive climate action and show the way and shine the light into the future. But we need every Hamiltonian to step up and join us to the best of their ability. And when I say that, I mean local business and industry, institutional and other community partners, and community at large, to do all that they need to do, really, if we have any hope of succeeding in implementing the strategy fully and realizing that net zero emissions goal by 2050, if not much sooner. I think if anyone who's following the climate crisis globally knows we need to act swiftly. So we've incorporated this slide just as a brief recap to remind everyone that Hamilton has a climate action strategy. It was approved by our city council in August of 2022. So it was approved at the tail end of the previous term of council, and it's guided by two core plans. We have Recharge Hamilton, the Community Energy and Emissions Plan. You probably have heard people refer to it as the CEEP, and this is our climate mitigation plan. So it's very much focused on actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that cause climate change. And then the other piece of the strategy is a climate change impact adaptation plan. And that plan really focuses on actions that help to manage or adapt to a changing climate. And the reality is we're facing some of those impacts right now. So think extreme heat, flooding, damage from more frequent cycles of freeze thaw in the wintertime. So those sorts of things we know are happening around us, and we need to pay attention to them now. I mean, I even think about the wacky weather we've had this spring as an indication of some of that need to figure out how to adapt. And I want to add here too that climate justice and applying a climate justice lens to all that we do is essential. Embracing climate justice really requires acknowledging that we're not all impacted in the same way by the climate crisis. Climate change can have differing social, economic, public health, and other adverse impacts on vulnerable and marginalized community members. And we need to consider and address this imbalance through the climate mitigation and adaptation actions that we take in our community. And that's something we talk a lot about, and you'll hear us saying that over and over again. And that's going to become more and more important if you think about poorly housed Hamiltonian or homeless Hamiltonians, for instance. They're really on the front lines in terms of impacts from the changing climate. And then just very quickly, we just want to remind all of you about the greenhouse gas emissions profile for Hamilton. And so you can see we're a little bit different from other GTHA communities because industry is a really substantial contributor. It's at the top of the list. And then behind industry is transportation, followed by buildings and agriculture. And, I've referred to industry as the climate elephant in the room, but I always like to say to people that that doesn't take away from us collectively as a community that important responsibility to continue to act. So we need to act to support and advocate for industry to address their emissions, but we also need to pay attention to the other sources of emissions in our community, because if you took industry away, we're on par with other GTA municipalities in terms of what we're contributing. So here are our 2023 priority focus areas. Trevor and I are going to quickly walk through them just to give you a sense of what we're focusing on in the office this year. And they're organized under the following five themes. We have climate change, governance and innovation, community climate outreach, carbon budgeting, green buildings, and urban greening. And just quickly here on the governance side, this is just to give you a sense of the structure internally. So, we've got me now sitting as the Director of Climate Change Initiatives, and I've got a team, and right now it's me and Trevor, but you are all likely aware that we receive support to hire in 2 new staff to help us with all of the work that needs to happen. And so we are in the thick of a process to recruit in a new senior project manager and project manager, and they will be essential to our ability to do all of the important work that we need to make happen this year. And then just very quickly, we have 2 other internal committees that are being set up. One is a climate change initiative steering committee that'll be made up of directors across most impacted portfolios, and then a broader climate change initiatives extended leadership group. And I can tell you, I was just in front of senior leadership team today, sharing more information with them, and we'll be moving very quickly to get that climate change initiative steering committee meeting and moving forward on important action. And that'll be, both of those committees will be important places where staff can come together and accelerate actions, innovate, look for synergies, but also stay in touch with each other and provide updates and provide us in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives with the information that we need to know that they're following through on city-led that initiatives, and they're helping us to track the progress that we're making with meeting our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. And I should say just one other piece on the innovation side that emerges out of that governance structure. We now have a climate change reserve at the city, and it's existed for a couple of years, but I think the difference now is that we've got a sustainable source of funding for that reserve, and that was approved as part of the 2023 budget. So now on an annual basis, that climate change reserve will receive additional funding to the tune of $2.5 million. And you'll hear more about that hopefully in the coming months, but that's support for climate innovation from within the municipality. So piloting of new efforts, testing out new ways to see greenhouse gas emissions reduced or efforts accelerated. But it's also going to provide us with the ability to enter into creative partnerships out in the community and leverage our ability to make change happen more rapidly. So you'll definitely be hearing more about that as we move along. We're also going to be focused on community climate outreach. That's a really important piece of our work this year. We'll be building a communications strategy so that we're sharing more regularly with the public what we're doing, progress that's being made in other departments in the city, but also positive efforts that are being undertaken by the private sector, by community organizations, even by individual Hamiltonians. So we'll be wanting to hear your stories if you've got something that you want to share in the way of positive climate action. So there'll be lots of work done on that front, as well as basic information just to make sure that Hamiltonians understand why the climate crisis is something we need to be paying attention to. So some basic climate 101 information, as well as details about the Hamilton Climate Action Strategy so that everyone understands what's in that strategy and the work that we know we need to do over the coming decades. We're also working right now to finalize an agreement in partnership with the Bay Area Climate Change Council. And for those who don't know them, they're a really wonderful organization that's helped to facilitate regional action. So between the cities of Hamilton and Burlington collectively. And again, bringing a diverse group of stakeholders together and figuring out how to move things along. So for instance, the council has been really helpful to the city of Hamilton in facilitating efforts to see a home energy retrofit program move along. And then finally, we're also looking at our annual reporting format and methodology. So we will be reporting back to council in October of this year, but with all of the additional work, we're looking at how that reporting needs to evolve and change to make sure we're getting that information out to council and also to the broader community in clear and meaningful ways. One of the other priorities for this year is the initiating the creation of a carbon budget framework. And so for those who maybe aren't familiar with what we mean when we say carbon budget, I've just pulled out this little quote from a Clean Air Partnership briefing note on municipal carbon budgeting. Gives you a little bit of a sense of how the process works. And I can tell you that in Hamilton, our climate action strategy calls for the creation of a multi-pronged carbon accounting framework. So it's a higher level framework, and that carbon budget is a key prong. Another prong is procurement, and we're going to be looking in the future at greening that procurement process within the municipality. But the carbon budgeting is our first step, and essentially what happens is a carbon budget establishes caps on how much a community can emit leading up to its target years for emission reductions. And our office will be working with finance to initiate the creation of that budget framework. And we've got a goal right now of implementing that framework at least across one or two divisions, but the ultimate goal here is to implement that carbon budget process right across the entire corporation in the future. So that'll be coming as well. And then my last section here in terms of priorities, urban greening is another priority for us this year. And I'm really excited about this one. So we'll be facilitating implementation of enhanced urban greening initiatives this year and well into the future. And I've just shared some examples on the screen. One of them is a community tree planting that was done last year to extend out Miyawaki mini forest down at Windermere Basin Park. And then the other one is a Cannon Street D-PAVE project that was supported partly by the city through the Ward 2 councillor, but also with the work of Green Venture, Environment Hamilton, and another Beasley Neighborhood Association, a number of other community organizations. So what we're really going to be doing here with the urban greening efforts is prioritizing getting more green happening in locations of the city that desperately need it. We want to see equitable distribution of things like the urban forest canopy in our city. And this takes us full circle right back to climate justice and that importance of greening up, particularly urban spaces where there's lots of concrete and asphalt, so that humans and other living beings have green places with native trees and native plant species that can support us and nurture us and keep us cool, and filter the air and do all of those wonderful things that trees do to help us, particularly when it comes to the climate emergency and addressing it. And I am now going to hand it over to Trevor to speak to the rest of the priorities. Trevor.
Great, thanks so much, Lynda, and good evening, everyone. So we'll go to the next slide. So Lynda mentioned Hamilton's climate action strategy that was approved by City Council in August 2022. We had been working on that since City Council declared a climate change emergency, doing very scientific, technical modeling, looking at low carbon scenario modeling, greenhouse gas emissions, as well as looking at the science of climate change, looking at global and regional climate models downscale to the local level to identify those risks and vulnerabilities to our community, to our infrastructure. But it also included a very extensive community engagement activities as well. And these are some of the things that we heard loud and clear during those consultation activities is the importance of transparent reporting and the need to have a formal advisory committee to council. And I'll be the first to admit, when we first started looking into this was not what city staff had in mind, but we heard the community loud and clear. And so that's what we recommended to City Council as part of that governance piece that Lynda talked about, the establishment of a community climate change advisory committee. What we also heard loud and clear is that this committee needs to be represented of the diverse voices across Hamilton, with equity inclusion embedded right into the terms of reference and even before. And within those memberships, that membership needs to be represented fairly by Black, Indigenous, and people of color and equity deserving communities. And so this future Community Climate Change Advisory Committee will be supported by our Office of Climate Change Initiatives. And Lynda spoke to some of the new staff that we are hiring as well, that will help us to support this committee, as well as do all of the other great work that Lynda and I will be talking about today. Next slide, please, Lynda. So we did extensive engagement on the establishment of the Community Climate Change Advisory Committee throughout the fall and winter of 2022 and into early 2023. And what we wanted to make sure is that we were engaging with organizations, with people across the community. So we did library pop-up activities throughout the urban core, throughout the Northeast Industrial Core area, as well as up on the mountain. And we spoke to organizations like the YWCA, Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion, Hamilton Regional Friendship Center. And again, we heard loud and clear too that the committee needs to be represented. And so we're proud to say that in the terms of reference, we embedded, and from my understanding and reading, this was the first time that an advisory committee has clear objectives, EDI objectives set out in the terms of reference. So the selection review committee, when they review the applications, need to have these objectives in mind to ensure a minimum 50% gender diversity, as well as a minimum 30% representation from equity deserving groups. And so that 50% and 30% is representative of the entire Community Climate Change Advisory Committee. So when the Selection Review Committee looks at, you'll see at the bottom of the slide where we have sectors reserved. So for example, when the Selection Review Committee reviews academics, agricultural, citizens, they need to keep those EDI objectives front and center. But we also have specific seats reserved. For example, we have 2 seats reserved for Indigenous people. We have 2 seats reserved for youth members, and we have 3 seats reserved for citizens across Hamilton. And so the total Community Climate Change Advisory Committee will have approximately 15 to 20 seats. And I do feel that this committee will be very important and very impactful for prioritizing Hamilton's climate change action strategies in terms of the implementation, what we work on, as well as that transparent and equitable reporting as well, because what might be transparent and clear for me might not be transparent and clear. So we really want to get the advice and direction from this important committee moving forward on the implementation of actions, but as well as on the reporting as well, among other things that the terms of reference lay out. Next slide, please, Lynda. So one of our office's priorities that Lynda touched on at the very beginning was green buildings. And Lynda mentioned Hamilton is a very unique municipality in that industry does contribute the most significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. But when we look at the trends, industry has actually reduced their emissions quite significantly for a variety of reasons, including government policy, regulations, perhaps some closures as well. But when you look at buildings and transportation emissions, since 2006, it's actually steadily increased. And so when industry reduces their emissions, we'll be left with that same large piece of that pie or greenhouse gas emissions pie that every other municipality has to deal with, including buildings. And so that's why Lynda and I are committed to working on developing an energy performance or net zero standard for all municipal buildings. And we want to do that because we want to be able to say to ourselves, we as a city are moving and implementing a net zero standard. And so if we can do it, everyone can do it. And so really then as a leverage and looking to incentivize, encourage, require private development in the future. We are hand-tied with Ontario Building Code. There's some information too that I want to share after our presentation on some consultation efforts regarding the national and Ontario Building Code. But first I want to touch on, we have a very exciting program that Council just approved. What's today? Thursday? So they just approved it yesterday. And really excited that Council approved what's now called the Better Homes Hamilton, previously known as the Home Energy Retrofit Opportunity. And that's a really innovative program that the city will be launching later this year, which aims to give $20,000 loans to property owners in order to retrofit their buildings, focusing on building envelope performance, so insulation, air tightness, as well as looking at mechanically fuel switching from boilers, natural gas systems to air source heat pumps, which are a much more efficient and very low carbon option for heating buildings. And so more information is available on our engage.hamilton.ca/hero. That will be, of course, being updated very soon now that Council has approved the new Better Homes, Better Homes Hamilton program, but that link will still be applicable as well. Next slide, please. And so just very quickly, I'm not going to go through all of these, but Lynda touched on this at the very beginning of the presentation. These are our office's priorities. And as you know, Lynda and I are 2 staff in a very large city. And so we wanted to highlight some of the great work that other departments are doing as well. And so, for example, the corporate green fleet strategy was approved in 2021, I believe, with a very ambitious plan and strategy to switch our internal combustion light duty vehicles to battery all electric. Approximately the target was 89 vehicles to be converted. That combined with some innovative biodiesel blending for our large vehicles, that has some estimates to reduce our corporate fleet emissions by 18% over 4 years. We have run into some procurement issues, as with every municipality, and I think anyone looking for electric vehicles right now. But that strategy is still very much in place. Everyone will know we just launched a scooter program, and of course, forestry annually does a lot of great street tree planting, but also some free tree giveaways as well. Next slide, please, Lynda. And I think this might be one of my last slides. And so in the community, and this is where, yes, this is the city of Hamilton needs to be a leader and a strong leader in the fight against climate change, but we definitely can't do it ourselves. And we need everyone, every sector, every organization, every person to also take action. And I was actually a little surprised when the Canadian Steel Producers Association came out, I believe it was 2020, when they came out with their net zero target by 2050. And that really was the signal to the steel producers across Canada that they need to decarbonize. And so I think all of you will be somewhat familiar with the large investments made by the federal and provincial governments for ArcelorMittal Dofasco, which is the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Hamilton, if not Canada, and definitely one of the top 10 in all of Canada. And so that action alone is estimated to reduce 3 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And this is the third point here is really to help, I think, steel and other industry and other hard to decarbonize sectors really move forward on that innovation. And this is what we're calling Hamilton Region Decarbonization Hub, which also got approval recently by City Council to move forward. And that's really looking to drive the innovation and research and start piloting some really innovative technologies, such as hydrogen, but also looking at other renewable forms of energy in the transportation and building sector as well. And of course, too, the City of Hamilton is a partner and working on Hamilton Community Enterprises through their district energy and renewable energy solutions. And we're looking at a really cool and innovative feasibility study right now that would look to capture residual or waste heat from heavy industry, pipe it underground through new district energy that would then also be able to heat and potentially cool industrial and commercial buildings along that industrial core area. Next slide, and I think that is it for me. So I'll say thank you so much for listening, and we'll pass it back to Councillor Wilson, I believe.
And so thank you both for that very, very thorough summary and overview. It was a good week this week in terms of some climate work. As Trevor noted, just Wednesday, Council formalized or ratified to go ahead with its partnership on the Regional Carbonization Hub, and also the very exciting move of the Better Homes Hamilton, formerly known as HERO. So a good news week. This is obviously a discussion that is going to go on for forever, and it is ours to have and it's ours to lead. So this is not going to be the end of these types of engagement. And we're going to make specific reference on the Ward 1 website of what's going on in the world of Trevor and Lynda, their office, and keep you fully apprised. And we're going to ask both of them to keep us fully apprised of some links and information that we know that you'd be interested in. And so that's our commitment to you. We'll put all reports that that come from the office in that special section on our website, so you have easy access to it. And of course, we're always going to be here to answer any questions that you may have. And if we don't know the answers, we're going to do everything we can to get them to you. And as has been clearly demonstrated tonight, Dr. Lukasik and Trevor are more than capable of helping us get those answers. So thank you to you. Thank you both. I'd like to thank everybody who has joined us tonight, and I hope you will continue to participate in these important discussions as we move forward. In my opinion, the climate is not an ideological discussion. It doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum. This is on your agenda because it has to be, and it's going to be. So whatever your persuasion, wherever you live in the city, whether you're a Ward 1 resident or not, please engage, please lean in, and please join us in these deliberations and the actions, and do what you, as Lynda said at the beginning, do what is within your reach and what is accessible to you. So thank you very much.